No, I'm here. Morning, morning, morning. When we're not doing our little chat to start off with, I just get everything set up first. So it's all going live at the same time. And everybody now on Instagram and YouTube and everything is going to wonder what we're talking about. But yeah, it's not just you. We're here. Everybody's here. Good morning. Welcome to our Monday morning practice. Today, what I would like to do, we're focusing, as we usually do on a Monday, a little bit more on the breath. And first of all, we'll do some mobilization as we always do. And then I want to explore the relationship between the diaphragm pelvic floor. This came about from a client I was talking to, and I'll explain a little bit more when we go through the practice. But it's a really subtle connection. So it's not like we can go, right, let's see you lifting weights or lifting the leg or breathing like this. It's very subtle. So I would like to explore it and then get your feedback actually from it as well. And then we'll finish off with some seated breath work at the end, as we usually do now on a Monday morning. So if you would like to find a space, you've got space around you. As always, just starting off with some mobilization, getting that spine activated, energized. Start off with a little bit of knocking. With the focus on the spine, lengthening and lifting through the crown. Relaxing into the shoulders, the shoulder blades. And just breathing very easily in and out through the nose. Not necessarily thinking about how you need to breathe or breathing in a particular way. Just soft, light, effortless nasal breathing. Nasal breathing as in just keeping your mouth closed, basically. I usually have a client at 6:30 on a Monday, so didn't have client this morning, so I've actually been out for my little run before our session, which is usually go after, in between this and the next session. So it's quite nice that I've done my run. So this is my cool down. But of course you can use it as a warm up as well. Let's bring the arm that swings across the front into a very light fist, and we're just tapping on the top of the lung. And here we'll take a couple of cleansing and clearing breaths. And what we mean by that is just taking that full breath in through the nose and holding for a few seconds at the top and then letting go. And that let go can be through the mouth or nose, whatever feels comfortable. Full breath in through the nose. Let go. Cleansing and clearing. It's like a nice sigh. Breath in and hold for a few seconds and let go. Back down to belly and back. And then contrasting that, slowing down, and we'll just lower a little bit as well. Sink down a little bit into water waves. Really feel that contrast in movement, in energy. Just letting the breath naturally slow. And take a rest. Just bring palms out, palms facing forwards. Just letting the breath settle, relaxing into the face. Just having that tongue just gently resting on the roof of the mouth. And then we'll have a little bit of a shake out. Shaking the wrists, using the legs, freeing up the shoulders, back of the neck. And again, a couple of cleansing and clearing breaths, breathing in through the nose. And a little hold at the top, let go. And slow it down, palms out again. Open up the palms. Let's breathe in, gently through the nose, very quietly, no big breaths. And then breathing out. As we breathe out, I want you to sink down a little bit, bend the knees a little bit. As you breathe in, raise up. And then as you breathe out, sink down. I really want to get that focus on whole body movement, not just arms and shoulders. So you're raising your center of gravity. The shoulders aren't planing this, it's just raising the center of gravity, lowering your center of gravity. Raising and expanding as you're breathing in. Lowering and sinking as you're breathing out. Let's do one more. And then take a rest. Let's have palms facing forwards again. Spinal cord breathing, so we fold the hips or bend at the hips a little bit as if we're sitting back, a little bit of bend in the knees. We keep in this position and we get that pelvic tilt spilling out the front of the pelvis, opening up and the chest and lifting the heart towards the sky, curling up into a little ball, tucking the pelvis underneath or tucking the tailbone underneath. So we keep low with this one so we get that movement through that whole spine, tailbone to cranium, and breathing in as we open up and expand, breathing out. Soft, light, easy breathing, not forcing the breath. Just do two more in your own time. And then take a rest. This time let's do palms towards the ground. A little bit of roundness in the elbows. Go center of palm towards the ground. So really have a connection, center of palm. Bring awareness to the index finger. So it's almost like the index fingers are pointing towards each other. then relaxing the arms. Dog wags the tail, so pelvis parallel to the ground, just shifting the weight side to side. Watch that you're not doing this. Still see some of you on Zoom doing this, pelvis side to side. Parallel to the ground. So you feel the weight shifting side to side, and then free up the upper body. And you want to get that wave all the way through the spine, all the way from the base of the spine, all the way through the lower back, mid back. You should feel the rib cage, and then upper back and neck. So a ripple, a wave all the way through the spine. Really relax the shoulders. You don't have to work the shoulders. Here I'm working the shoulders. Here I'm working the neck. Everything, all the power comes from here. I'm just shifting my center of gravity, shifting my lower dantian side to side, and then that upper body frees up. And slow it down. And a little bit of shake out again. Shake, 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 shake. If you want a little bit more of a vigorous shake, you can. If you just feel like a gentle shake, just have a gentle shake. A little bit more vigorous, you can tap the heels into the ground. Get more vibration through the bones. Good old shake. And take a rest. Palms facing forwards. Let the breath just settle gently. Good. Let's bring now, you can bring your feet about shoulder width apart. Have a little walk around if you need a little bit of a walk around. Shake the legs out a little bit if you want to shake your legs out a little bit. And then we're going to bring our hands just on to the ribs. So you've got lower ribs, get right down to the lower ribs. Have your thumb into the back of the ribs. And just take a few slightly fuller breaths. And see if you can just gently push the hands out, or push the fingers out to the side. And see if you can also feel that space in the back of the ribs as well. Can you breathe? Can you get that space into the back of the ribs? If you can, if you're not, if you don't have any problems with the shoulders, what you can do is you can just put your hands on the back of the ribs like that. See if you can get some movement, just some very subtle movement in the back of the ribs as well. Just taking slightly fuller, slower breaths. Breathing into, feeling the lower part of the lungs expanding. Breathing into the lower ribs. If we start to get tension in the shoulders, stop and shake out. It's not about creating tension in the shoulders, it's about breathing into the lower ribs. Now, without hurting yourself, I want us to experiment a little bit, excuse me, by pushing these ribs forwards. So really sort of like thrust the lower ribs forwards. Just be careful on the lower back, because what you'll do is you'll create like a little bit more compression in the lower back. But just really, it's almost like a stand up straight, chest out, shoulders back, which we're often told to do. And see what happens then. Oh, yeah, there is very little movement in the ribs, because we've almost like locked the ribs in this position. So the rib cage then becomes almost like fixed. You might feel your belly rise and fall or push out and come back, but there's no movement in the ribs. And then bring those ribs back in. Don't worry if you start to feel as if you're rounding the upper back here. Just bring the ribs in. Oh yeah, you can feel all that expansion. Feel that expansion as you bring the ribs in. And then if you are rounding there a little bit, keep those ribs in, but think what we've just done with that spinal cord breathing. Open up that upper back there. Open up that thoracic spine. So that's why we want to think about lengthening the spine up, but keeping these ribs in rather than forcing out or rounding like this. So when we're doing any of our rotation stuff, it's in that position. That spine is that central axis. So you've got the ribs in and you should be able to feel there. You're creating that little bit more space. So that's quite an easy, in inverted commas, something to explore and feel. The next one is a little bit more challenging to feel and to sense. So what I'd like you to do is put your fingers together like that, find your belly button, and then come about 3 fingers down from the belly button, and just put, my microphone wires there, so I don't want to cut the microphone off, just put a tiny bit of pressure there. Now, if it feels uncomfortable, stop. I had a client on Friday and giggling away on this one because it was like, it's actually a good acupressure point if you've got bloating or if you've got wind or anything like that. So, and digestion. So if you feel uncomfortable, stop. You don't have to put too much pressure there. But I want you to feel now how this area responds as you're breathing in and out. And again, you can just take slightly fuller breaths. Just slightly slower, fuller breaths, just to explore the sensation. And it's how this area responds. We're not trying to do anything with the muscles or anything in this area. We're just noticing how this area responds to the breath. As you're breathing in, you should feel a little bit of pressure pushing the fingers out. And then as you're breathing out, the fingers sink back in. As you're breathing in, belly pushes out. As you're breathing out, belly sinks back in. And see how much you can almost soften in this area. If you're not feeling it to start off with, what you can be doing is just tightening everything up here, tightening in the hips, tightening in the lower abs. See if you can soften into this area so you feel that. How much can you let go to soften into that area? And again, if it feels uncomfortable, just stop. And this is why I say it's challenging, because it's not obvious. We can't physically really see what's going on here. It is very much you tuning into how it feels. So as you're breathing in, pushing out. As you're breathing out, coming back in. So if you stay with that, if you're comfortable staying with that, just stay with that physical sensation. I explain what is happening there. As we're breathing in, the diaphragm, here's my diaphragm up here. There it is in its resting position. As I'm breathing in, it moves down. So that's what you're feeling by those ribs and the back expanding, that 3-dimensional breath as the diaphragm moves down. That creates pressure, intra-abdominal pressure here in the abdomen. And that's what you're feeling, that pressure pushing those lower abs out. If we pull everything in here all of the time, which is often the case because we're just bracing all of the time, you're not going to feel the space as much. And what that can do is push the breath up here. And so just feel that diaphragm moving down, creating the pressure, and you're getting the response of that pressure here, particularly in the lower abdomen. So when we're talking about a deep breath, it's not about the volume. That's big, big breath, big volume. If you're talking about a deep breath, you can take such a light, thin thread of air deep and feel that resonance, feel that centering, feel that grounding. So if somebody says, take some nice deep breaths to calm down, there you go, slow, light, deep breathing. If you misinterpret that and start going, and we take too many of those, then you're going to get lightheaded because we disturb the balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen. It's okay to do 1 or 2, cleansing and clearing, because we're moving the body, we're creating carbon dioxide. If we do too many of those, when we're not creating as much carbon dioxide, then we reduce that oxygen delivery. So just think of that as a true deep breath. Just spend a couple more moments just noticing. And then take a rest. I will put a link underneath the videos on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, because I wrote a blog about this, and it came about just because a colleague was talking about nasal breathing when running, and she said to me, well, I can do it for a little while, but what happens is I start to get a lot of aggravation in my nose. And it just made me realize that when we talk about nasal breathing, it doesn't mean pulling air into the nose, because if you're running and trying to do this, you're just restricting and tightening everything up here. So actually what is happening, and this is what I was focusing on particularly last week when I was doing a little bit of a tempo run, is you using this pelvic floor diaphragm pump to actually breathe. So you are, if you're running and if you're using a little bit more effort or a little bit more power, when you breathe out, you can physically just pull up the pelvic floor or pull in a little bit there just below the lower abs, just to give you that extra little bit of power. I don't want you to do this when you're just standing there, because you don't need to, but just think when you go out walking, just have that little emphasis, if you're walking or running, on breathing in and then breathing out, just pulling up that pelvic floor, just pulling in a little bit there without overdoing it. It's not about just tightening everything up. And this is so important, because if we just tighten everything up here, muscles become what we call hypertonic. And if they become hypertonic, too tight, they don't work. So this is why I said it is so subtle, but just have a little explore with that. And I would love to get your feedback if anybody's sensing anything, because it's quite often a big sort of like, oh yeah, that makes such a difference moment, hopefully. Or if it doesn't work, do you know what I mean? If you say you don't know what you're talking about, just please message me and get back to me on that one. Good, take a seat. Now, as you are sitting, what you can also do is, again, think about that nice, long, tall spine. If you've got a nice solid surface that you're sitting on as well, this does help. If you've got these comfy chairs that are rotating and everything's not great. So if you're sitting on a nice solid surface, breathe into the hips. So see if you can just feel that breath. And again, we're not physically breathing into the hips. The breath stops at the bottom of the lungs, hopefully, obviously. Diaphragm is creating that pressure. So you can feel the pressure into the hips, into the pelvic floor. So when we're doing the setup of any sort of like seated breath work, and I say soften the chest, soften the belly, that's what I mean. Just keep the belly soft. Don't start using your abs to breathe. Just keep the belly soft. And this is why the strength of the spine comes into play. So if you've got a weak spine, where can you soften? So you need that strong spine so that you can soften the front of the body. You can soften into the belly, soften right down into the hips, into the lower abs. And then you can soften also into the chest. And a really nice focus softening into the chest. If you watched Barbara's Lunch and Learn the other week that we did, breathing into the heart, I really like that sort of like focus, because there you go, softening into the chest. You're just breathing into the heart, softening into the chest. Also the top of the lungs, you know, the lung point we're just tapping, and if you want to do a little bit of a tapping as well there, just tap. We can often hold a lot of tension here, so just freeing up the top of the lungs. Particularly that first rib can often get a little bit stuck, so just breathing and softening into the top of the lungs. And again, this is where I'm really, when people are very black and white about nose breathing, mouth breathing, chest breathing, belly breathing, we don't just belly breathe or chest breathe. The whole unit is breathing, but it's where the focus is, or where the emphasis is. So we can breathe into the chest, we can feel that softness up here, but without taking big breaths. If we're talking about shallow breathing, that's when everything is tight and tense up here and the breath is just coming up here. But don't feel you have to tighten here just to bring the breath low. The breath fills everywhere, but it's the volume. So we're just breathing a very light volume, but you can still soften into the chest, into the ribs. Breathe into the heart. Soften into the belly, and just see how light and soft that you can breathe, just gently breathing in and out through the nose. The lips are lightly together. And again, just checking with that tongue position if it's just resting gently on the roof of the mouth. And there's your light, slow, deep. So we're softening into the belly. You've got your mouth closed, so you're breathing through the nose. There's no active movements to nasal breathe. And see if you can just check in and bring awareness without doing anything or without trying to do anything of that connection between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. Good, and then when you are ready, opening your eyes. A few of you had your eyes closed there on Zoom. Have a little bit of a pulling down again, breathing in and breathing out. Get that spine moving. Just do one more. Morning stretch. Lovely. A little bit of a shake if you need a shake. Good. I would love to get your feedback on that, and we will do, I know I keep saying this, we will do a Saturday Unlock the Power of the Breath, and I think this is what I want to focus on because it's so subtle, but it's so important, and it can be so powerful when you explore it as well. So I thank you for your time this morning, really appreciate it. I will see you hopefully on Wednesday when we will do a little bit more movement, but bearing in mind that if you have this connection between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, that's going to make movement and the breath work more efficiently as well. Brilliant. Susie has just commented, watching, so happy to have caught this live, Gray. Thank you, Gray. Yes to pelvic floor connection. Good. That's nice to get feedback on Instagram, and I can read it because I'm close to the screen. Brilliant. Have a great rest of your day, and then hopefully see you on Wednesday. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.